or did you ever use a code? Everyone use password?
I use a password, Midrash.
Yep, there you go. Did anybody not use a password? Anybody?
I'm Maryland, by the way.
Everybody used a password? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I was kind of hoping we didn't have to, but
No, we don't want to see any Zoomers. Zoom on me.
you're a Zoomer. You're not a Zoom bomber, though. Don't be a Zoom bomber. I could not imagine Diane ever being a Zoom bomber, though. That would be.
Wait, you haven't seen anything yet.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. That would have been a good one.
It's getting crazy in here.
I know. Well, people are ready to go, which is great. It's wonderful to have everybody. And again, I wish we didn't have to. Use passwords. It's kind of like a recognition that even in this, with these circumstances, we have to worry about other stuff that we shouldn't have to. Yeah, but it is what it is. I hope everyone's staying healthy. I guess everybody is healthy because you're here, I assume. I guess I shouldn't assume that, but everybody who's joined us already looks good. You look good, so you're not coming from lying down in a prone position on the bed, so that's a good sign. It's this is the carb load time of pre-Passover time where I barely can move right now because I'm stocking up for a week and a day of not eating bread. So I'm glutinous. Is that right? Is that the right word there? I'm glutinous. I'm a glutinous.
I'm here, but I
You're
can't see.
glutton for gluten.
Gluteneous. I'm a gluteneous blob at this point. But this is not when I want to get my I don't want to get on a scale. But I also it's just part of the tradition. What can I say? I'm using it as an excuse too for why I need to keep myself happy right now. We're all doing that, I think, a little eating our stress.
Not me.
No?
I've been sticking to my diet, down 52 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That's phenomenal. That's excellent.
Impressive.
Congratulations. I can only imagine that it's going to be able to continue through Passover. So yeah, people are jumping on. Oh, I want to say before we officially start, just to remind people again, and again, I was sorry that we had to do this password business, but I actually had friends, some rabbinic
Right. Is
colleagues that
there
I'm friends with.
on whatever you're looking on, is there a search engine?
What? No.
Is there a search bar?
I got
Here we go. Better.
I had a friend in Florida who got Zoom bombed during Friday night services. So this is real. I mean, this is actually
All Saints got Zoom bombed on Sunday.
really.
Yes, oh, it was awful. We figured out how to cut him off, but geez.
Did you? Okay. Hey, I just want to remind everybody as we'll wait another couple minutes to get everybody on here, but Passover Seder, the televised one is starting Wednesday afternoon, really here. That's what I've been working on the last couple of days, putting together the Passover Seder that'll be on television as well as internet. That's through JLTV. That's coming up on Wednesday night. And then Thursday night, we're going to do our Seder on Zoom.
That's the channel we don't get.
Yeah. Well, no, you do, because everybody gets it. Because
No, we don't get it. We don't. It has to. You need to be premium.
I know. So some people have the wrong tier. I don't say they don't have the premium tier. They have a different tier. it's very confusing. Look, up until a week ago, the Dodgers weren't even on DirecTV, so I don't feel so bad. But and
Did
now
you hear the latest about Major League Baseball?
you can watch them. Yeah, that they're going to play in Arizona, right?
All 30 teams.
Yeah, I can't even believe that. But anyways, back to the Seder. You can watch it on YouTube. It'll be up on YouTube. It will be up on Facebook as well. And it reminds me, we want to make sure that we're putting this on. We want to make sure we're putting this up on Facebook for people too. And then the community Seder. Sorry, Thursday night. It will be myself. Ken or Alyssa will be doing it. That will be on Thursday night, and that'll be on Zoom. So that will be able to talk and have people be interactive. They'll be interactive on that.
How are you?
And we tried it out a little bit with our religious school Seder, which we had on Sunday, which was a kick.
You're a wonderful person.
Just so you know, we actually had our Passover meals this year. We are providing meals for 150 people. So that was a lot of cooking, a lot of soup. No, we didn't. We only made the. Tracy only made the soup, but I made. She made some other stuff too. But it was. We didn't know how many people would need meals this year. We've never done that before, where we actually sent out meals to people's homes or had them come and pick it up. But yeah, it ended up being a big thing for us to do, and it's a big thing for the people who needed to have the meal. So yeah, we're glad that we could do something, because we all feel a little frustrated right now, and so we're doing what we can. So hopefully you're catching too some of the little things I'm posting up, some of the people that are doing introductions or blessings or just saying hi during our Passover Seder. I hope you're able to see some of the stuff that's going on there. It's another labor of love, but it's going to be, I promise you, it's going to be a lot of fun. The Passover Seder on JLTV, which again, you can see on YouTube and on Facebook. We'll be streaming it there too. So let's get going. We're now also up on Facebook for people that are just going around and looking for things to do on Facebook. So we are reading the story of Jacob, and I'm going to put this up for you. No, that's not where we are. That's way far away. No, we're reading the stories of Jacob and Esau, and where we left off was the blessing that Isaac is giving to his sons. And the fact that he wanted to give the blessing to his son Esau, but instead he gets the blessing to, he ends up giving the blessing to Jacob. But that's kind of where we're at right now. So let me skip ahead to that section where we're at. And so much happening. And we're going to see some of the issues that the Midrash had with the story, some of the problems with the story, and also how they kind of dealt with it. Let's see. Oh, you know what? Some of the people that are watching on Facebook, we're going to bring you in here because you don't know the secret. You don't know the secret password.
That's weird.
It is Midrash, Midrash, Midrash. It's a Midrash with all lowercase. So for those who are, but what if somebody's like stalking us on Facebook? Then I just gave away the secret.
And you just give us away, Mark.
You know, I don't know.
Doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of having a password if you're giving it away?
I know. That's
You're not used to this.
I know. All right. So So let's read where we left off. Is the blessing and the fact that as we're going to and we'll just kind of read back where we were where we left off, just to give people a little taste of what we finished with. That when Jacob puts on the clothes that are going to make him be able to be touched by his father as Esau, as they're able to pull this off. This is we read that this is not just skins, that these are not just normal leather or kind of even kind of hairy clothing. It's a garment that, according to tradition, goes all the way back to Adam, and it's got a mystical, magical properties. This garment that they're pretending is on Jacob now. So we're going to continue with, and so that's what we kind of left off with, and the fact that it says that Esau didn't always dress up, and we're kind of here at the bottom of this page. It says he didn't usually care much about what he wore. It's another one of his qualities, which makes him kind of tells us that he's not such a great guy. But he does dress up for his father, because he says that his father is like a king. And so I want to go before my father in the proper attire. So that's where we left off. And now we're going to continue here with Rebecca, their mother, both of their mothers, obviously they're twins, taking them taking now Jacob in to see and to be blessed by Isaac. So let's take a look at this. We read some interesting midrash in the last couple of weeks about women and how important and how powerful and how they have really some strength and some power that men don't have. That's also going to be in what we read this week. So for those of you that want to be inspired by good feminist midrash, there's some in this too, I promise. So here's and of course it kind of goes back to one of the great matriarchs we have, Rebecca. So Rosemary, did you want to take us through Rebecca?
Rebecca led Jacob, equipped and arrayed in this way, to the door of Isaac's chamber. There she parted from him with the words, "Henceforward may your Creator assist you." Jacob entered, addressing Isaac with "Father," and receiving the response, "Here am I." "Who are you, my son?" He replied equivocally, "It is I, thy firstborn son is Esau."
Okay, so let's pause and explain what happened here. Some of you know this midrash right here. It's a kind of a famous midrash, and I don't think we have Ronnie on right now. He loves these actually he doesn't love these midrash, but he's excited by them. So what happens here is that when Rebecca sends Jacob off to do this, she basically says, God's going to be with you now. So we know that when Isaac called Esau to go do this, he said, Hineni. He said, here I am, which is really, really possible. I mean, that's a positive thing about Esau. And here, when Jacob is now confronted by his father, the question is again to him, he says to him in the Torah, and again, this is what we read in Genesis chapter 27, he went to his father and he said, Hineni. But then he says, Isaac says back to him, Miata bani, which of my sons are you? And this is, in the Torah, it seems as though Isaac knows right away that he's being tricked. So the Bible is pretty clear that there's a trick going on here, but the rabbis don't really like the idea of what Jacob is doing here. And so again, this is a very famous midrash, but this is one that tries to get Jacob off the hook by saying he didn't really lie. Because when Isaac says to him, "Who are you?" it says that Jacob answered, "Vayomer Yaakov el Aviv, Anochi Esau bechorecha." I am, now the literal term is, "I am Esau, your firstborn." But what the rabbis just did is that Jacob says equivocally, "It is I, it's me. Your firstborn son is Esau." Whereas he doesn't say, "It is me, your firstborn son Esau," where he says, "It's me, and your firstborn son is Esau." Like he's saying two different, like he's talking about two different people. Because, Rosemary?
He sought to avoid a falsehood and yet not betray that he was Jacob.
So he lies kind of, but not. I mean, that's why it says equivocally that he doesn't really flat out lie and say, I'm Esau. So he says, "It is me, your firstborn's Esau." So it's again pretty clear from the Torah what he did. And the rabbis kind of know what he did, but they don't like it. They don't like this idea that Jacob flat out lied to his father. So that's why they have it the way it is. All right. So let's continue.
He sought to avoid a falsehood and yet not betray that he was Jacob. Isaac then said, "You are greatly in haste to secure your blessing. Your father Abraham was 75 years old when he was blessed, and you are but 63. Jacob replied awkwardly, "Because the Lord your God sent me good speed." Isaac concluded at once that this was not Esau, for he would not have mentioned the name of God, and he made up his mind to feel the son before him and make sure who he was.
Okay, so let's pause right there. So this is what the Torah says. So all of this is a play off what the Torah says. Because he said, because Isaac says to him, Isaac says, "How did you succeed so quickly, my son?" And he said, and Jacob says, "Because the Lord your God granted me good fortune," which they translate again, because the Lord thy God sent me good speed. So what the Midrash just said was, because Jacob said what he had said, he gave away who he really was because he invoked the name of God. Because Isaac knows that his other son Esau would never say, "Because God gave me a miracle." Now you can make the case that he didn't say, "My God." Jacob actually said, "Your God granted me good fortune." So he didn't actually say, "My God." The translation is "thy God." But it didn't matter. That was enough for Isaac to know that that's not Esau. And so it says here, keep going, Rosemary.
Okay. Terror seized upon Jacob at the words of Isaac, "Come near, I pray you, that I may feel you, my son." A cold sweat covered his body, and his heart melted like wax. Then God caused the archangels, Michael and Gabriel, to descend. The one seized his right hand, the other his left hand, while the Lord God himself supported him, that his courage might not fail him. Isaac felt him, and finding his hands hairy, he said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." Words in which he conveyed the prophecy that so long as the voice of Jacob is heard in the houses of prayer and of learning, the hands of Esau will not be able to prevail against him.
Okay.
Yes, he continued, it is the voice of Jacob,
Okay.
the voice that imposes silence upon those on earth and in heaven. For even the angels may not raise their voices in praise of God until Israel has finished his prayers.
Right. So this is a very famous line in the Torah where Isaac says, the voice is that of Jacob, yet the hands are the hands of Esau. So this trick is, according to the Torah, Isaac is knowing that as he's doing this that something wrong is happening. This isn't going the way he thought it would go. And so the Midrash gives us this wonderful story, this addition, that the angels literally had to come down and make him do it because he couldn't do it. He was scared at doing what he was kind of being tricked into doing. I mean, not kind of. He's being tricked into doing it. But not only is he being tricked into doing it, he knows it's a trick. And so he doesn't really know what to do at this point. And so the angels and God, and it says God itself actually helps him do this. So it's a really interesting scene because the Torah definitely gives us a sense that Isaac kind of senses this, but in the Midrash, it goes even further that he knows deep down what's happening here. And of course, the rabbis teach a really powerful lesson from this, which is that Jacob and his descendants, us, will always be able to be strong and defeat our enemies, and nobody will be able to hurt us as long as our voice, like Jacob's, will be heard. And where does it have to be heard? In the Beit HaMidrash. It has to be heard doing what we're doing right now, which is prayer and study. We do that. By the way, we didn't say our prayer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam la'asok b'divrei Torah. We thank you, God, for the mitzvah of studying Torah. And so when we pray and when we learn, Esau has no power over us. Again, for those who haven't been here the last few weeks, Esau represents our eternal enemies, the flip side, kind of our nemesis, but not so much in the classical Greek meaning, which it's always, again, when we get too arrogant. It's really it's more dark than a nemesis in the sense that the nemesis is there actually to help you from not being too arrogant. In this case, it's more of the way we usually use the word nemesis, which is like our arch enemy. That's what Esau represents. So our arch enemy is there kind of to strike us when we get out of line, and not when we get hubris, not when we get arrogant, but when we go off the path. So Esau has this role to play as again, the archetype or the symbol of everything that we're not, and again, to hurt us. So the rabbis are pretty clear that Isaac really didn't want to do this, maybe knew he had to do it, but still isn't comfortable doing it. So let's read this.
Isaac's scruples about blessing the son before him were not yet removed, for with his prophetical eye, he foresaw that this one would have descendants who would vex the Lord. At the same time, it was revealed to him that even the sinners in Israel would turn penitents, and then he was ready to bless Jacob. He bade him come near and kiss him to indicate that it would be Jacob who would imprint the last kiss upon Isaac before he was consigned to the grave, he and none other. When Jacob stood close to him, he discerned the fragrance of paradise clinging to him, and he exclaimed, "See, the smell of my son is as the smell of the field which the Lord has blessed."
Yes, and that is something that he does say to him, is he says to him, the smell is the smell of the fields that the Lord has blessed. Now, the kind of the plain meaning of this is that Esau is a hunter. He goes outside. He's an outdoorsman, whereas Jacob is in the tents. And so you'd think that the plain meaning is that he just smells like the outdoors. But the rabbis interpreted this a different way, which is that Jacob had the smell of heaven around him, and that this made Isaac feel comfortable. It's a very sensory experience what's going on here. It's a very, very, I mean, literally a multi-sensory experience that, you know, is never conveyed in paintings, not even conveyed in movie versions of this. Because think about all the senses that are used. The sense of touch, the sense of sight, the fact that kind of sets up this whole scene is Isaac not being able to see well. The fact that you have the food that's going to be tasted, and even here, the sense of smell that's here in this scene. So all of the senses are kind of brought in together to make this scene possible. It's not only multi-sensory, there's so many different levels here, which the rabbis are kind of peeling away, and in some cases complicating further by trying to get Jacob off the hook here. Again, the Torah seems pretty clear that Isaac didn't want to do this, that there's a great deal of hesitation, and we're going to see what happens even after he realizes what happens. This is it's not an easy thing for Isaac, and the rabbis recognize that. They understand.
Jacob.
Yes. Wait, you're here now. You are here now.
You've been here the whole time, practically.
Well, I wanted to. You always get mad at this scene because of the way it tries to get Jacob off the hook.
I'm not angry.
Oh, not angry. You're passionate. You're passionate about it.
This is what I think. I think when this stuff was written, not even written.
You got to be louder. Can't hear you.
I said, my feeling is when the story emerged, whether it was an oral story or when it was redacted by whoever wrote the Torah, there was a certain sensibility in the world. And the sensibility included the possibility of other gods and people back with each other. And they were fine with Jacob fooling Isaac to get what he deserved, because that's the way the world was supposed to be. Now, the rabbis come along a couple of hundred years later, their sensibility is different. And now they're trying to superimpose their sensibility onto the story. And that's what the Midrash seems to be doing. And we do it all the time now when we reinterpret what the founding fathers really felt. You know? I mean, we make Jefferson into this incredible hero, which he is, but he was also a slave owner. And we tend to all agree with each other to forget that when we talk about Thomas Jefferson most of the time. Does that make sense?
Yes. I think all of us would, after we were seeing this, understand that this is what's going on here. So Jacob has now. Well, we're not done with this yet. Let's read more about what happens with Jacob here. He hasn't gotten the blessing yet. These are all midrash that kind of give us the setup for the blessing. You're going to see the blessing in a second. Okay.
The fragrance emanating from Jacob was not the only thing about him which derived from paradise. The archangel Michael had fetched thence the wine which Jacob gave his father to drink, that an exalted mood might descend upon him. For only when a man is joyously excited, the Shekinah rests upon him. The Holy Spirit filled Isaac, and he gave Jacob his tenfold blessing. God give you...
Hold right there. Just one quick second. So it says, Michael, the angel Michael... I can hear somebody's TV or something. So somebody's got to mute their TV. Michael brought wine from heaven, which is weird because we didn't know maybe that there was wine in heaven, but there is. And Michael brings some of that heavenly wine to Jacob to give to his father.
Is it kosher for Passover?
It's
How could it be heaven if it wasn't, there wasn't wine there?
heavenly wine. I mean, who would have thought that they have this heavenly wine that Jacob gets a little bit to go with the meal? And it says the Shekhinah, when a man is joyously excited, the Shekhinah, the divine presence, rests upon him.
Gets a little tipsy, and who comes in? God.
Yeah, but God.
I'll drink to that.
God is the. We're going to see the Shekhinah make appearances in the next couple of this week and next week. The Shekhinah is the divine presence, the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, as we say in Hebrew. But it's the Shekhinah oftentimes is kind of connected, is the divine presence, is the way we feel it in the world. It's the Holy Spirit. I mean, it's one of the possibilities. It's a feminine name of that Holy Spirit, by the way. I want to point out Ruach can be male or female word, but Shekhinah is clearly a feminine word. And we use that word as for the divine presence, for one of the ways that God manifests God's presence in the world. So the weird thing is that we just read a midrash that says when somebody is, it doesn't say necessarily they have to be drunk in order to be. I want to make that real clear. They don't have to be on anything to be joyously excited, but it really is good when we are excited that God is with us. The divine presence is with us when we're joyously excited. Sometimes we need wine to, especially now at this very moment we are in our we need to have some of that so that the divine spirit would rest upon us. But it's an interesting midrash because it basically said in order for Isaac to give this blessing now to Jacob, that Isaac needs to get into the right frame of mind. That for the Ruach HaKodesh to be there, he had to be happy. He had to be. Well, let's read it.
The Holy Spirit filled Isaac, and he gave Jacob his tenfold blessing. God give you of the dew of heaven, the celestial dew, wherewith God will awaken the pious to new life in days to come, and of the fatness of the earth, the goods of this world, and plenty of corn and wine, the Torah and the commandments, which bestow the same joy upon man as abundant harvests. Peoples shall serve you. The Japhethites and the Hamites, nations shall bow down to you. The Shemite nations, you will be lord over your brethren, the Ishmaelites and the descendants of Keturah. Your mother's sons will bow down to you, Esau and his princes. Cursed be everyone that curses you, like Balaam, and blessed be everyone that blesses you, like Moses.
Yeah. So you can see that's quite the blessing. And that's the way the blessing in the parts in the quotes, it's not really air quotes, those were real quotes. The quotes were the actual blessing as it exists in Genesis. I could show it to you, but you just read it. Trust me. It's just another translation of the blessing. The rabbis point out that this is actually this isn't one blessing. There's 10 blessings in here. So this is a super duper blessing that he gets. And it can be interpreted the different parts of the blessing will be, are then, as we just saw, they are picked apart and they are explained. They're decompressed.
So even though Jacob is presenting himself as Esau, nonetheless, I mean, Jacob sees through that and blesses, I mean, Isaac sees through that and blesses Jacob in spite of that?
Yeah, but that's what the Torah says. So the issue is that how much did Isaac know? How much did Isaac see? The rabbis aren't really sure because they've kind of given us this midrash, which are and a few different. These are a few different midrashim rolled together. That there seems to be an understanding that Isaac has that he's being tricked, but it's almost too late. He can't turn back, and at this stage, there's almost this recognition that
Okay, well, maybe
I
you can
gotta,
get it.
I gotta fulfill this as kind of the way that
Hello.
this must be the
This
divine,
bothers my ear.
this must be the divine, Cheryl, we hear you. This must be the divine plan. So who's included in this stuff? Everybody, because not only do you get the earth doing for you what you know, the logical, most rational, obvious thing is you're going to have a lot of food. You're going to be successful as a farmer, as a herdsman. You're going to have good things happen in the natural world. That's not what the rabbis say is really the blessing here, because the dew of the heaven is not just that you get good moisture for your crops and for your animals. Now, this is heavenly dew that wakes people back up. It resurrects them. So this is a moisture from heaven that will one day resurrect people. That's what the dew of heaven is. Celestial dew, where the good people, the pious, are going to be woken up, back up in the world to come. Not heaven necessarily. Again, the Messianic age. And what is that? The animating ingredient to make us come back to life in our bones is the dew of heaven. That's what we just read. It's not, again, it's not what you would obviously say from this, but that's how the rabbis interpret this blessing. Again, you can kind of see some of the other things that are interpreted here. The plenty of corn and wine, Torah and the commandments. You know, they interpret the redundancy of produce, that it's not just produce, that it's also Torah and the commandments, the mitzvot. The people's
Interesting. It doesn't say corn and grapes. It says corn and wine.
Yeah, I'm wondering right now whether the Hebrew words are dagan v'tirosh, which dagan they translate in this other translation that we have is new grain. Dagan is oftentimes used as corn. It's definitely grain, some type of grain. It's not wheat. It's not the usual word we usually use for wheat. Tirosh is kind of the word. It's not a word that we use for necessarily grapes, but it's actually like the produce of grapes. It's more like the vintage, as we would say, is trampling out the vintage. That's what the tirosh is translated as, I think, in the King James. So it's the product. It's not just the raw materials, but it's the product. And then again, the redundancy of let the people serve you, let the umim, let those nations serve you. And then it also says, let the nations bow to you and be master over your brothers. Let your mother's sons bow to you. So the redundancy of this, you could say that, well, this is biblical poetry, but the rabbis say, no, each of those things represents something else. The Japhites and the Hamites are the other sons of Noah. If you divide the world into three, the Japhites and the Hamites are the Europeans and the Africans. And when it says the nation shall bow down to you, those are the Semitic peoples. Those are the people of the Near East, of the Middle East, if you will, whatever. The Arabs, the Persians, those kinds of people. And then it specifically will then say the Ishmaelites and the descendants of Keturah, and then Esau and his princes. Those are the people who are closer related to you, even more narrowly than the children of Noah. So rather than just say, oh, these are nice biblical synonyms, they actually decompress it and give us all these other things that are included in the blessing. So the blessing, the midrash on the blessing is that it's much more, it includes much more than you'd think it would. So what's interesting, again, is then we have another midrash, which is for each blessing.
For each blessing invoked upon Jacob by his father Isaac, a similar blessing was bestowed upon him by God himself in the same words. As Isaac blessed him with dew, so also God. And the remnant of Jacob shall be in the midst of many peoples, as dew from the Lord. Isaac blessed him with the fatness of the earth, so also God. And you shall give the rain of your seed, that you shall sow the ground with it, and bread of the increase of the ground, and it shall be fat and plenteous. Isaac blessed him with plenty of corn and wine, so also God. I will send you corn and wine. Isaac said, peoples shall serve you, so also God. Kings shall be your nursing fathers, and their queens your nursing mothers. They shall bow down to you with their faces to the earth and lick the dust of your feet. Isaac said, nations shall bow down to you, so also God. And he will make you high above all nations which he has made, in praise and in name and in honor.
So this is a separate midrash, a different midrash, but it's kind of a similar idea, which is that God gave Jacob blessings in addition, or God's versions of this came as well, which is kind of weird because you would say, well, isn't the blessing that Jacob is getting from Isaac, his father, isn't that God's blessing anyways? But it's almost as if we get this idea that God further blesses Jacob with every place that every way that he blesses him. The rabbis interpret it with a whole nother level of what this could mean. And I think what you see here is a really interesting attempt that the rabbis try to make here, which is, well, I guess the Jewish people are blessed by Jacob, but they surely, not everything works out their way. And so there's this understanding that if we're blessed, why do we go through all these things? And so the rabbis interpret this to give us some type of perspective of, even when our situation is bad, that's part of God's blessing, that something is going to come out of that. And so even though we're maybe not the kings now, one day we will be, and those kings will kiss our feet, is what, I mean, that's what it said. So there's this idea that God will set things right, that God will make this eventually turn. And of course, this is what the message of Chad Gadya is, the silly song that we sing at the end of the Seder, which is, you know, the story of the goat, the kid that, you know, causes a whole chain reaction where God eventually intervenes. But it says, you know, the cat ate the goat, the dog bit the cat, etc. And according to tradition, each one of those represents a different kingdom that came against us. And so when the song was sung and when it was composed during the Middle Ages, by that point, you know, there had been all these kingdoms that had come up. And then now, I think in the last 100 years, people have reinterpreted Chad Gadya to include, you know, the Nazis or some of the more modern, especially the Nazis, but some of the more modern enemies of Israel. But this idea that somehow at the end, that God's going to vindicate Israel and give them the sense of now power, you know, this was part of the reality of looking around your situation and saying, well, how did Jacob get blessed? Because we're seriously not being blessed right now. So this is the thing that I think to kind of keep in mind. The rabbis, by the time they're writing this, they're writing from a reality that's doesn't seem to be blessed. And so they had to consider that. Okay. Let's continue because the blessing doesn't stop.
To this double blessing, his mother Rebekah joined hers. For he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. They shall bear you up in their hands, lest you dash your feet against a stone. You shall tread upon the lion and adder. The young lion and the serpent shall you trample underfoot. Because he has set your love upon me, therefore I will deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. The Holy Spirit added in turn, he shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation.
Right. So what we have there is a nice little midrash that Rebecca also adds blessing here, which is strange because we read in a different midrash she's not there. But there is this midrash that she is there, or at least knows what's happening, and adds her own blessing to the blessing that her husband gave, that God gave, and now she's going to give a blessing too. What's interesting about her blessing is it's actually Psalm 91. And so this is an example of the rabbis throwing in other texts from other places so that they can connect the Bible and say that there's a reason for the psalm to be the way it is. So again, even though we would say, well, King David wrote these psalms, the rabbis would say, yeah, but he's singing old stuff. He maybe didn't quite compose it. Maybe he set it to music. Maybe he rediscovered it. But this song, this prayer, this blessing was actually Rebecca's. So now this is a really interesting, again, reminder of how special Rebecca is. She's able to give a blessing that is not only unique and powerful and is something that is added, doesn't have to be. The rabbis want to make it real clear that she added blessing too, but that she actually composes here Psalm 91. So it's pretty cool. So here's another blessing.
Jacob left the presence of his father, crowned like a bridegroom, adorned like a bride, and bathed in celestial dew, which filled his bones with marrow and transformed him into a hero and a giant. Of a miracle done for him at that very moment, Jacob himself was not aware. Had he tarried with his father an instant longer, Esau would have met him there and would surely have slain him. It happened that exactly as Jacob was on the point of leaving the tent of his father, carrying in his hands the plates off which Isaac had eaten, he noticed Esau approaching, and he concealed himself behind the door. Fortunately, it was a revolving door, so that though he could see Esau, he could not be seen by him.
Yeah. I want to point this out. I actually looked this up. Revolving doors, the patent for the first revolving door is from 1889. So this was not a revolving door. It could not have been a revolving door that we would think of now, especially.
Well, maybe it just wasn't patented.
Well, I thought about this, and clearly, you see it in these castles where they have this door that kind of turns, and one person comes in, one person comes out. I think that might have been more of what they were thinking of, not the revolving doors that you see so much back east. Not so much here, but because we're not freezing outside usually. But yeah, this kind of door that was kind of like he could go out right as he was coming in. But it obviously it adds to the drama. It adds to the tension and the fact that Jacob actually has a miracle here. So Jacob actually comes out of this, though his body is different after he's blessed, which is interesting because it kind of goes along with this idea that Jacob, and it says like Jacob became a giant after that Jacob was not like that before, where it seems like his brother physically is a more impressive specimen, that after this blessing, Jacob is, if he's not the Incredible Hulk after it, he's definitely not a scrawny student anymore, that this blessing gave him these powers, which is pretty cool, that Jacob is changed by the blessing. It's not, it's a pretty big deal that not only does his father and God and his mother all bless him, but that the blessing immediately transforms him into something different. And it physically changes him. Any questions, comments, anything as we move into this next section, which is, so then what happened? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, how does being a giant fit in with Jacob having to hide for 34 years?
Having to what? Having to hide?
Yeah, Jacob is hiding from Esau for 34 years. He's 14 years with Shem and Eber, and then he's 20 years with Laban. And he's still afraid of Esau when he comes back to the Holy Land.
Yeah. Well, you just gave away part of what we're going to read, but that's okay. No, I'm glad you said it, right? Because we're about to read the fact that there's a strange midrash coming up, which is that Jacob doesn't go away right away, which kind of goes against the most obvious reading of the text, maybe. But you're about to read something in the midrash that you may not have heard before, which is something that Ronnie just said, that he doesn't leave right away. Yeah, so here's the interesting dilemma that the rabbis have, because they recognize that there's this tradition that Jacob is physically transformed by the blessing. But here's the weird thing. They've already told us that Esau was a giant. So maybe what happens at this point is that Jacob is now only as big as his brother, that Esau was already like that, and so now Jacob is like that. So maybe they'd match up, but Jacob might be only as powerful, or now maybe a little bit more powerful than Esau, but before he could have been crushed by Esau. Now he's a superhero. But the arch villain, the villain is pretty powerful too. And the rabbis don't let us forget that Esau is a powerful villain, and not to be ever seen as not a danger. I mean, that I have to say there's a double negative. Because he cannot give up. Jacob and his descendants, meaning you and I, can never forget how powerful Esau is, because he does have Abraham and Isaac's bloodline. You can never take that away from him. But he doesn't use his power the right way. Anybody else? So let's read what Esau does now, because the Torah does tell us that Esau comes in right after this. Well, he comes in after this scene. He doesn't. Well, we'll get to it. All right. Here's Esau.
Esau's true character revealed. Esau arrived after a delay of 4 hours. In spite of all the efforts he had put forth, he had not succeeded in catching any game, and he was compelled to kill a dog and prepare its flesh for his father's meal.
Yeah, I just want to point out, it doesn't say that in the Torah. Don't look for that in the Torah. It says that he came back from his hunt. Now, it does say he came back from his hunt. It doesn't say, and this is how the rabbis get away with putting this in here, it doesn't say that he came back with any food. It says he came back from his hunt. And then it says he too prepared a dish and brought it to his father. So the interesting thing the rabbis did right here is they said, yeah, he came back with nothing. And then what did he do? He killed a dog. So this is obviously not good. This is not, for a lot of reasons. You're not supposed to eat dogs. You're not supposed to feed your dad dog meat. There's nothing good in what just happened. It is not the plain reading of the text, but there is an opening that's given here by the fact that Esau comes back from his hunt. And it doesn't say specifically he came back from his hunt with food. So that's why we have this. So again, gives us it allows the rabbis to give us some bad stuff about Esau. So
all this had made Esau ill-humored, and when he bade his father partake of the meal, the invitation sounded harsh. "Let my father arise," he said, "and eat of his son's venison." Jacob had spoken differently. He had said, "Arise, I pray you, sit and eat of my venison."
Okay, hold it right there. So the words that the rabbis also are pointing out here, what the difference is in the way that they talk to their father. So they're pointing out that there's a difference here. There's a difference between what he says to him. He says, when Jacob serves him, he says, pray, which is the translation in the Hebrew. It says, kumna, which isn't just get up. Kumna means please get up, pray get up. You know, it's the word na added there is a nice term. When Esau says it, he says to his father, Yakam Avi, get up, my father. Now he does call him my father, but because he doesn't say na there, he doesn't say please, the rabbis point out this is, you know, the difference between Jacob and Esau is the way they talk to their father. So they point out the one missing word there is the na, please.
Are there other examples of that in the Torah, the difference in the language?
You know, not one where that I can think of where it's in the same conversation. There might be where they're in the same, where it's close by, but this is literally, you know, he walks out and it happens in the, you know, it happens in the same scene. The rabbis definitely point out the difference in language and the way people will talk. You know, if they don't put in a na and there's something similar where you could say na or pardon, you know, pardon or please, they do point that out. But here it's you know, they're right next to each other. The two stories are right next to each other, so it's a perfect opening for this midrash.
Would another example of the word be when Moses speaks to the rock?
I don't think he uses the word na there, but I don't think he ever used the word na there. He does use the word very famously, El na rafan Allah, please God heal her, when he's speaking to God about his sister Miriam. He says El na rafan Allah, which is beautiful, it's poetic. That's why people have written songs to it, El na rafan Allah. It sounds so much better in Hebrew than in English. Please God heal her. El na rafan Allah. So it actually says please twice. El na, please God, rafana, please heal her. Please God, please heal her. Or please God, heal her, please. But it's a nice word to say, na. So the rabbis point out this is why he wasn't in a good, but it's hard to say that he said it rudely to him, because he says my father, but you know,
He's just sort of gruff.
yeah. And let's put it this way. They say he already is mad because he's not happy that he had a hard time finding the food, which we read last week, by the way. That was Satan. That was the work of Satan, keeping the food away from him, not letting him catch the game, giving him time, buying Jacob time so he can make this food. So again, definitely not the plain reading of this. So here's what happens.
The words of Esau terrified Isaac greatly. His fright exceeded that which he had felt when his father was about to offer him as a sacrifice. And he cried out, "Who then is he that has been the mediator between me and the Lord to make the blessing reach Jacob?" Words meant to imply that he suspected Rebekah of having instigated Jacob's act.
Okay. So we're going to do something real quick because I think we need to do it here. We're going to look at the text. We got to look at the text. Let us take a look at the text. Let's take a look. So here's the text. Let's look at this. You got to go towards the end of chapter 27. So here's the part right here. Here it is. So it says, he too prepared a dish and brought it to his father, and he said, "Let my father sit up." That's the way it's usually translated. Father, not just father sit up. And he said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm your son Esau, your firstborn." Isaac, I'm in somebody's computer or whatever. Isaac was seized with a very violent trembling. Who was it then, he demanded, that hunted game and brought it to me? I gotta
Don, mute your screen.
So
Thanks, Phyllis.
all right, I just fixed it. Come back on if you're with us, if you want to say something. So he said, he says Isaac was seized by a very violent trembling, which the rabbis point out. The violent trembling, this sounds a lot like what happened at the Akedah when he's bound. That this is a scary scene. So they make that comparison in the Midrash we just read. But here's where it says, let's look. Isaac was, who was it then, he demanded, that hunted game and brought it to me? Moreover, I ate of it before you came, and I blessed him. Now he must remain blessed. So the translation here is, the translation here for this that they're using is, when I was tricked, who did it? And the Midrash basically put out there that the who was it then is not Jacob, but Rebekah. Because we read that Rebekah was the one who prepared the food. So by preparing the food, this allows the Midrash to then put it back on Rebekah, not on Jacob. It doesn't say, it didn't just say, again, he brought me food, but there was food there. Somebody prepared it. Who did that? And so he turns it on Rebekah. I mean, according to the Midrash. Again, the plain reading of the Torah doesn't necessarily give you that. But it was the fact that he didn't just say, who brought me that food then, but who hunted the game and brought it to me. And so Isaac implicates Rebekah in this as well, by the way he says it. So that's what just happened. Again, I want to point out in the text where Esau says, Ani bincha bechorcha Esau, which is the question that when Isaac asks Jacob, who are you? He says the same thing that Jacob said, Ani binecha bechorcha Esau. He says the same exact 4 words, except now it's not a lie. It's not an equivocation. I'm your son Esau, your firstborn. And again, the rabbis are left with the fact that it does say that Isaac is scared when this happens. So the rabbis can't say that Isaac was completely okay with this, because why else does he go into a trembling when this happens? So this is why you have this text. Let's go back to the Midrash, to the Midrashic text. So Isaac's alarm. You ready, Rosemary?
Let's try this again. Isaac's alarm was caused by his seeing hell at the feet of Esau. Scarcely had he entered the house when the walls thereof began to get hot on account of the nearness of hell. which he brought along with him. Isaac could not but exclaim, "Who will be burnt down yonder, I or my son Jacob?" And the Lord answered him, "Neither you nor Jacob, but the hunter."
So here we have this interesting midrash. It's not that Isaac is scared because he's been tricked. It's that Isaac is scared because he can smell hell on Esau. And that's what scared him. That's what caused him to be frightened. So it's not the trick. It's not the trick that just happened. It's that Esau brings literally the smell and the feeling of hell, the heat of hell with him. And God tells him, don't worry, you're not going to hell. And neither is Jacob. But Esau is the one who's going to hell. That's what we just read. It's a pretty weird midrash because we don't get a lot of descriptions of hell. We don't get a lot of fire and brimstone in the Torah or the midrash, but you just got it there. Yep.
Isaac told Esau that the meat set before him by Jacob had marvelous qualities. Any savor that one desired it possessed. It was even endowed with the taste of the food that God will grant the pious in the world to come. I know not, he said, what the meat was, but I had only to wish for bread, and it tasted like bread, or fish, or locusts, or flesh of animals. In short, it had the taste of any dainty one could wish for. When Esau heard the word flesh, he began to weep, and he said, "To me Jacob gave no more than a dish of lentils, and in payment for it he took my birthright. What must he have taken from you for flesh of animals?" Hitherto, Isaac had been in great anguish on account of the thought that he had committed a wrong in giving his blessing to his younger son instead of the firstborn, to whom it belonged by law and custom. But when he heard that Jacob had acquired the birthright from Esau, he said, "I gave my blessing to the right one."
So here's an interesting midrash that brings the two things together, the birthright, the inheritance, and the blessing, which is that Esau just gave away, according to what we just read in the midrash, Esau had never told his parents that he had given away his birthright for a bowl of beans, lentil soup. But because now in the second story, the blessing story, we now have stew, the rabbis make this interesting connection that this allows Esau to say out loud, "Oh my goodness, I gave away my thing for beans. Oh my gosh." Esau realizes what he just gave away, how powerful what he actually gave away was, and that also now outs him for what he had done by spurning the birthright, which then allows Isaac not to be as scared anymore, because now Isaac, who again, why would he be scared up until this point? Because maybe he really thinks that Esau deserves the blessing. But now that he knows that Esau didn't really deserve it, now he's okay. Now he can rest a little bit more assured that the right thing happened the way it should happen. Again, these are all ways to kind of make Isaac not as messed up by this as he was, because we do know that Isaac was Isaac's not going to back down from what he did. Isaac, we're going to see, the Torah tells us, says, I can't undo what I had done. So I think there was something else in here.
Does Isaac ever talk to Jacob again? In the Torah? I don't think so.
Well, not after this scene, but let's see what happens, because we're going to finish this. What we're going to finish with today is what happens. It's not so clear what happens with the two of them. Okay, I'm just going to tell you, it's not really clear. Yeah. They do talk in the next scene, Isaac and Jacob. And there's another blessing actually that happens. But, well, Ronnie kind of already gave it away. The question of how much time elapses between this, the rabbis take we're going to see the Midrash, it takes a lot longer than you'd think, than you would have thought. What else did I want to point out? Oh, when you, in the world to come, what you eat, and it tastes like whatever the food in heaven is, or the world to come. Yeah, kind of world to come, either the Messianic age or heaven, depending on, well, in this one, it seems to be the Messianic age. The food you eat tastes like whatever you want it to taste like. It's kind of like defending your life at the end when Albert Brooks, after he dies, he goes to heaven and he can eat whatever he wants to eat. This was obviously important for our ancestors and important to us to think about what we get to eat in heaven and to know that we never have to diet again. It's kind of wild to think what that food would be like. Any other, I can't remember if there's anything else here in this section here. All right, well, we'll continue on. Let's continue on in his dismay.
In his dismay, Isaac had the intention of cursing Jacob for having wrested the blessing from him through cunning. God prevented him from carrying out his plan. He reminded him that he would curse himself, seeing that his blessing contained the words, "Cursed be everyone that curses you." But Isaac was not willing to acknowledge his blessing valid as applied to Jacob until he was informed that his second son was the possessor of the birthright. Only then did he say, "Yea, he shall be blessed." Whereat Esau cried with an exceeding great and bitter cry. By way of punishment for having been the cause of such distress, a descendant of Jacob, Mordecai, was also made to cry with a loud and bitter cry, and his grief was brought forth by the Amalekite Haman, the descendant of Esau. At the words of Isaac, "Thy brother came with wisdom and has taken away your blessing," Isaac spat out in vexation and said, "He took away my birthright and I kept silence, and now that he takes away my blessing, should I also keep silence? Is not he rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times."
Yep. And this is the Torah. The Torah is gives us this scene, which basically says that line is exactly from the Torah. Actually, both lines. Your brother came to me with guile and took away your blessing. And Esau said, was he then named Jacob that he might supplant me these 2 times? First he took away my birthright, now he's taken away my blessing. So it's interesting because does he finally realize why Jacob is named Jacob, the supplanter? Is that what he, is he saying, oh, you named him this just so that, again, he'd live up to his name. So this is the problem that the Torah gives us, this idea that Esau is very hurt by what happened, and they recognize that there is legitimacy to this, that this isn't, when somebody has been messed over like this, there's something wrong. You can't just walk away going, well, it's the way it was supposed to be. They're not willing to do that. And so they tell us this really interesting midrash that Rosemary just read in this paragraph, that this plays out later on with Mordecai and Haman. Ooh, you have to say boo. Because Haman, being an Amalekite, is a descendant of Esau. And what does Haman do? He makes Mordecai cry out. And so there's a measure for measure here. which is that there is a descendant of Jacob, Mordecai, who's going to cry out just like Esau cried out here. It's a really interesting, kind of beautiful poetic justice to it, which is that there's going to be an accounting for it. You can't have this kind of stuff play out without there being at least some type of accounting, even for Esau.
Which blessing story of blessing children do I remember where, and it may have been a midrash, where is it Rebecca switches, did I miss this? Switches her husband's hands. Is that another midrash that I dreamt from my youth?
No, you're talking about. Are you talking about the Ephraim and Manasseh blessing? But that's Joseph and Jacob.
Yeah, Joseph, but he switches Jacob's hands, right?
Jacob switches his hands, and Joseph tells.
It must be what I'm thinking of.
You've done it the wrong way, and that's a scene that we'll actually be reading soon. That's.
And there's no midrash that Rebecca does that. I'm just dreaming that.
Rebecca switches their hands. The switches no.
Yeah,
we read a midrash that the angels actually have to hold Isaac's hands down to bless Jacob.
Right.
I don't know of one that Rebecca
switches
makes him do it.
I've conflated the two.
Yeah, but this is an interesting midrash because again, it gives us this idea that there's a comeuppance, and again, you could say, well, it explains why the Jews suffered, to some extent under Haman, that there was a justice there. But the Amalekites are the descendants of Esau. We're going to read a midrash probably next week that reminds us of the direct line of the Amalekites from Esau. That Amalek is a grandson of Esau. Not only is Esau the ancestor of the Romans, he's a direct ancestor of the Amalekites. So that's why Esau kind of brings hell along with him, because he brings along. Esau is the ancestor of all these people that are going to give us a hard time, including, come on. So what I was wondering, and I had this thought recently, and again, I don't know if I could have forgotten it. I don't know if anyone's made the point. Why are the Edomites? Why are Esau's descendants so conflated? Why are they wrapped around the Romans? And I thought about it. I don't know if somebody's written it. I wonder if there was a conscious decision on the part of the rabbis, of the earliest rabbis who lived during the time of King Herod. And King Herod killed them. I mean, King Herod massacred the rabbis of his generation. He also massacred his own kids, but he did kill the rabbis. King Herod, according to the history, we know he's part Edomite. His father is Idumean. He's called Herod. I mean, he's an Idumean. He's Jewish because his father and his grandfather were converted to Judaism. The Edomites were forcibly converted to Judaism by the Hasmoneans. It's the only case of forced conversion we have in Jewish history. So he's an Edomite, but of course he is Jewish in practice. He does amazing things for the Jewish community, especially the priests. He rebuilds the temple. I mean, the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, was built by King Herod, but at the same time, he also built a lot for the Romans. He was very Roman. He loved the Romans. He loved Augustus, was his friend. I mean, Caesar Augustus was his friend, his buddy. And so I wonder if because Herod was Edomite and he's also quasi-Roman, whether the rabbis got away with kind of like, or, not got away with, but kind of, ran them together so that the Edomites could be the Romans, maybe because of Herod. I don't know if I've ever read that, and I don't know if there's any basis for that, or maybe it was historically, they were already starting to do that before the Edomites, before King Herod even became king. But it's a weird issue because Herod is basically he's put in charge of the Jews, even though he's not of Jewish stock. So something to think about. I don't know. It could be. I mean, I don't know that I've read that, but and again, it could be that it's a little bit off, but it would be. Listen, at the very least, according to the way the rabbis do things, it would make. I mean, you could write that midrash because it is true. I mean, it actually that is a fact that the Edomites are linked to the Romans through King Herod, who's not a good guy, to say the least. All right, let's continue on. Isaac.
Isaac continued to speak to Esau. Behold, I have made him your lord. He is your king, and do what you will. Your blessings will still belong to him. All his brethren have I given to him for slaves, and what slaves possess belongs to their owner. There is nothing for it. You must be content that you will receive your bread baked from your master. The Lord took it ill of Isaac that he cheered him with such kind words. To my enemy, he reproached him. You say, what shall I do for you, my son? Isaac replied, oh, that he might find grace with you. God, he is recreant. Isaac, does he not act righteously when he honors his parents? God, in the land of uprightness will he deal wrongfully. He will stretch his hand forth in days to come against the temple. Isaac, then let him enjoy much good in this world, that he may not behold the abiding place of the Lord in the world to come.
So this is a discussion that Isaac and God have. And the basis for it is Isaac still wants Esau not to be written out. He's finding a way to basically protect Esau, his son. He doesn't want to give up on him. And all he can extract from God is, in this world, Esau and his descendants will do just fine.
There's something else going on.
Yeah.
The rabbis have just made this conflict between Jacob and Esau into an archetype for the conflict between good and evil. It's symbolic of what they're living through.
Well, there's definitely, you're right. There's definitely a good versus evil. For the rabbis, it's
a very Gnostic kind of overlay. If you look
yeah, but I will tell you that for them, it is very much it never stops being a Jewish versus Gentile argument, which again, it's not really comfortable for our sensibilities, but that's what it is. It is this idea that when people say, well, why do those people act the way they do? I don't like to say it. I mean, the way I rationalize it is the rabbis did this so that people would say, when these people act the way they do, it's because of Esau. It's because they can't do any better. There's no hope for them.
What?
That, by the way, it doesn't mean that every Jew is good. And we're actually going to see something in particular. We already read something about that because it says people only get the blessings of Jacob when they do the right thing. But you're going to see, and again, Esau to some extent is the avenger, not the avenger, but the punisher, is the executor of God's of evil to some extent that's visited upon us when we do bad. So Esau, we haven't even gotten to yet the blessing that he's going to get. It's been hinted at, but we got to get into the blessing that he does get, because the rabbis have to deal with the fact that the Torah says that Esau gets a blessing. After Isaac learns what happened, Esau weeps and says to his father, do you not have a blessing for me? Which is, I mean, the rabbis can't get away from the fact of how powerful that is. You can't ignore it because, I mean, they try to rationalize it. They try to say that there's something else going on here. But think about how powerful this is, what they've done, which is, well, I mean, what the Torah has done actually in the first place, because it's saying that that Esau, if he was not a good person, he still really wants a blessing from his father. So they're going to say, well, it's just because he wants to have all that stuff. He wants to have the material blessing. But he weeps and cries at this scene. You can't ignore that. It's not going away. The Torah is very clear, and it's even more powerful when you read it in the Torah, which is, have you but one blessing, Father? Bless me too. So here's what happens. Here's the blessing.
When it became plain to Esau that he could not induce his father to annul the blessing bestowed upon Jacob, he tried to force a blessing for himself by an underhand trick. He said, have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father, else it will be said you had but one blessing to bestow. Suppose Jacob and I had been righteous men, had not then your God had two blessings, one for each? The Lord himself made reply, silence. Jacob will bless the 12 tribes, and each blessing will be different from every other. But Isaac felt great pity for his older son, and he wanted to bless him. But the Shekhinah forsook him, and he could not carry out what he purposed. Thereupon Esau began to weep. He shed 3 tears. One ran from his right eye, the second from his left eye, and the third remained hanging from his eyelash. God said, this villain cries for his very life, and should I let him depart empty-handed? And then he bade Isaac bless his older son.
So what the rabbis just told us is that because Esau does cry, even God is moved to allow the villain to be blessed. Esau gets through to God and allows this blessing to happen. It's not supposed to happen. And Esau tries to push his father into it. He tries to not only guilt him into it, but he tries to like challenge his father. Really, you're not powerful enough to have 2 blessings in you. People are going to say you don't have blessings. And
But isn't it strange there? What's the symbolism there of just 3 tears? Does it mean he's not really crying?
Well,
or is it a significant number?
It is a symbolic number that in Judaism, when you do things 3 times, I'm just starting to cry right now. I shouldn't touch my eyes. When you cry or do anything, any action, when you do it 3 times, you've shown your full intent on it, that it's real. And that's why, I mean, we have lots of traditions. We actually are going to have one tomorrow night. Not tomorrow night, Wednesday night. Yeah, tomorrow night. That's tomorrow night, where you wash your hands. There's a tradition of washing your hands when we do the blessing over our washing our hands before we eat our food, that we wash each hand 3 times. It's part of our kavanah. It's part of our intention that when we do something 3 times. Some people also point out, we're supposed to use 3 shovelfuls or more of dirt when we bury somebody, that we're showing our intent, our kavanah, that we're doing it. It's real, that like if 1 time's an accident, 2 times maybe is a coincidence, but 3 times there's kavanah here. So he doesn't quite.
We tend to do things liturgically in 3.
Yeah. I mean,
but I assumed it was Trinitarian. So
no.
I like your.
It's 3. It's the 3 of it's the rule of 3 in Judaism, which is that's your kavanah. That shows your intent. You do something 3 times. That. You're really doing it. The interesting thing is that he doesn't quite get that 3rd tear out. He's about to. It's coming out, but it's hanging. But it's enough. So it's almost as if they're saying, yeah, he was going to get that 3rd tear out. He didn't really, but for God relented and it was enough. But yeah, like 1 tear he could have tricked that out. He could have been a game, but no, he almost cries 3 tears. Again, the blessing. Well, we know that Jacob's going to bless his blessing has to get turned out 12 different ways. And so they point out that each one of the blessings that he gives is different. Now, by the way, some of his blessings were curses, so they weren't such nice blessings. But it's interesting that the blessings are different for his sons. It's almost a recognition that, of course, all the sons deserve a blessing. but it's also that if you deserve a blessing, if the person deserves a blessing, well, let's put it this way. Everybody gets the blessing that they deserve, except for Esau, who ends up getting more of a blessing that he deserved, but because he cried and because God relented. And quite frankly, the rabbis have to, because the Torah tells us that he gets a blessing. And here's the blessing.
The blessing of Isaac ran thus. Behold, if the fat of the earth shall be your dwelling, by which he meant greater Greece in Italy, and of the dew of heaven from above, referring to Beit Gubrin, and by your sword shall you live, and you shall serve your brother. But when he casts off the yoke of the Lord, then shall you shake his yoke from off your neck, and you will be his master.
Yep. And that is the Torah blessing without the parts in the quotes, again, are the actual Torah blessing. You shall break the yoke off of your neck. You shall break his yoke. Interestingly, this is the way the rabbis interpret it many hundreds of years later when they were dealing with the Edomites being represented by the Romans. They saw that the blessing of the fat of the earth was Italy. And that this was their blessing, that Italy was a blessing.
What's Beit Gubrin?
So Beit Guvrin is a city in Israel. It's been excavated. I think, Judith, you went to Beit Guvrin, didn't you?
I did go to Beit Guvrin. They have a experience archaeology setup where they give you the tools and they take you into a cistern and let you dig.
Yep. And when I went there 10 years ago, there was a lot of dirt to dig. There's a lot less to dig. But yeah, it's kind of like a Disneyland of archaeology in Beit Guvrin. But
It's really great fun if y'all ever get to do it. It's really cool.
It's not as unexcavated as it used to be, but it's pretty neat. So we've excavated a lot of Beit Guvrin. It was a city that the Romans, Romans, pagans controlled within Judea proper. But it's basically, the Midrash is telling us, they got the descendants of Esau, the Edomites, they got beautiful countries outside of Israel. They got some beautiful places inside Israel. And that what happens here, they will eventually revolt and not be slaves to us anymore. When that text was written, that text that we just read, the Bible text, not the Midrash, not the parts that's not in the quotes. When the Midrash text was written, what happened was a different reality. When the Torah wrote it, it actually gives us a clue of when that part of the Torah was from. I mean, our ancestors and current people who believe this is a prophecy would say it was written, it was given when Isaac gave the blessing. But it actually teaches us when this was written, because the Edomites were slaves or a subsidiary kingdom to King David. And then eventually they revolt and they're able to get their independence back. And later on, they're actually able to fight against us and take part in the destruction of the temple, the first temple. So the Edomites get a blessing where they will serve us, but they'll eventually get out from under that. It's kind of an interesting clue as to when this was written. It is written well before King Herod, and the Edomites have that. It really wasn't. The Edomites were not in a good position when King Herod was born. They had been made subservient to Israel again, to Judea under the Maccabean kings. And then after that, Idumea is never a independent nation again. After the Roman experience, they disappear. The descendants of the Idumeans are living today in Jordan and Saudi Arabia are Arab. I mean, we don't know anybody who's an Edomite anymore. So not long after this, not long after the Midrash, period, they're gone. They don't even exist anymore. But when the Torah was written, they would go back and forth occasionally being under the yoke of Israel. And they were definitely under King David's control and Solomon's. So here's this next part.
The blessing which Isaac gave to his older son was bound to no condition whatsoever. Whether he deserved them or not, Esau was to enjoy the goods of this world. Jacob's blessing, however, depended upon his pious deeds. Through them, he would have a just claim upon earthly prosperity. Isaac thought, Jacob is a righteous man. He will not murmur against God, though it should come to pass that suffering be inflicted upon him in spite of his upright life. But that reprobate Esau, if he should do a good deed or pray to God and not be heard, he would say, as I pray to the idols for naught, so it is vain to pray to God. For this reason did Isaac bestow an unconditional blessing upon Esau.
A very interesting midrash, maybe the most interesting part of what we read today, which is that the descendants of Jacob, meaning us, our blessings conditional. That we only get our blessings if we do the right thing. Esau's blessing is not conditional. Now the reason the rabbis gave us was because if Esau didn't have an unconditional blessing, he would say that there is really no God, which is weird because, like, why do we care whether Esau recognizes God or not? But it's still a reflection on Isaac, because at the end of the day, Esau is still Isaac's son. And so we can't have him doubting God. He does lots of bad things. But if he's doubting God, then that's a reflection on Isaac. It's really a bad reflection on Isaac. And so this kind of represents this weird tension we have with Esau, which is that as much as he has huge problems, huge flaws, he's our enemy. I mean, there's so many things here. He's still Isaac's son. And so he's still our cousin, if you will. His descendants are our cousins. Yeah.
There's something else going on here. What this line is answering the question, how could we have been sent into the diaspora by the Edomites, by the Romans? It's because we did something wrong. Our blessing depends on us doing the right thing.
Yes.
The Romans are in charge because their blessing is unconditional. So if we do the right thing, situation will turn around.
Yep. Now, I will tell you, there's nothing in Isaac's blessing to Jacob that would make you think it's conditional. But you're absolutely right, Ronnie, that they had to explain the situation as it existed. And it goes back even further than the rabbis, because as we're going to read, there's a line from the prophet Obadiah who wrote about the Edomites destroying the first temple, because the Edomites were brought in by the Babylonians to do some of their dirty work, to plunder. And so the Edomites are a problem almost immediately after when the Davidic dynasty comes to an end. We're talking about 586, about this, 6th century BCE, the Edomites are a problem for us. So again, you're right. It's to explain the situation, but it exists even before the Roman era, where the Edomites are definitely a source of problem. And again, we are living with the destruction of the first temple, that God must have abandoned us. There must be, but then again, you can say, well, how do we wind up in Egypt? All of these kinds of things, the rabbis have to explain, and they have to explain the reality of what it is, of how we're living. And so they make it conditional. They say, look, if we as Jews, our blessings are conditional blessings. They're not guarantees. It's an interesting idea. I would argue, one of the most powerful ideas that we have in Judaism is that if God blesses us, it's a conditional blessing. It's not an automatic blessing. The idea is what we just read is that it's because we're supposed to have enough faith not to question whether God is with us or not. Because the descendants of Esau and his descendants will question whether God exists when they're given this situation. We as Jews can't question it. We can't question it. That's what the Edomites do. That's not what we do as Jews. We're not supposed to question it. As Jacob's descendants, we don't do that. That's the weird thing about this. It's a cautionary tale. Of course, the Edomites are not reading this. Jews are reading this. Don't murmur against God, because then you're like Esau. Then you're an Edomite. Then you're a descendant of Esau. So this is the lesson for us. It's not a lesson for. I mean, it's for us to take away. So this is the problem of what we have. We're going to read a little bit of this. I really didn't want to get to this because Ronnie was the one who brought us this weird teaching that we have. And also, Judith, you brought up this point of do Jacob and Isaac ever speak again? And they do. They do speak again. I don't know if we'll get to that part, but we're going to read about this weird story, which, again, it's in the Midrash. It's not in the Torah. How much time elapsed between Jacob stealing the blessing and him going up to get a wife? Let's read.
Jacob leaves his father's house. Esau hated his brother Jacob on account of the blessing that his father had given him. And Jacob was very much afraid of his brother Esau, and he fled to the house of Eber, the son of Shem, and he concealed himself there 14 years on account of his brother Esau. And he continued there to learn the ways of the Lord and his commandments. When Esau saw that Jacob had fled and escaped from him, and Jacob had cunningly obtained the blessing, then Esau grieved exceedingly, and he was also vexed at his father and mother.
So let's pause right there. Take a quick break. So you just read that 14 years, Jacob hides out, gets away from his brother Esau. And he continues to study. He continues to learn. Now, he's already 40. I mean, he's not a kid. This is what happens when he leaves his father's house. It says in the Torah that it says that Esau had said, "Let the mourning period of my father come, and I will kill my brother Jacob." And when the words of get back to Rebekah, she sent for her son and said, "Your brother Esau is consoling himself by killing you." It says, "Now listen to me, flee at once to my brother Laban and stay with him." Now, it seems as though that's it, that he's gone, like immediately. Get away. I mean, that's the plain understanding of it. That's what most of you who've read this story think happens. The issue is that's not what happens in the Torah even. So it says in the Midrash that we just read that Esau is mad at his father and his mother too. He's not just mad at his brother, he's mad at both of them. Keep that in mind as we finish up today with this story. I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to take us back to the Torah real quick. I'm going to take us back there because I want you to see it in the Torah and see what I'm talking about here with your own eyes. Oh man! Every time I touch that thing, it'll make it a little too small. Okay, so right here. So it says, when the words were reported, she sent for her. And again, it's literally the last line. Let the period of my father come, and I will kill my brother Jacob. And then it says, when the words reached Rebekah, And she says, now listen, flee at once to Haran, stay with him a while until your father's fury subsides. All right? So your brother's fury subsides, okay? He forgets what you've done, and I'll fetch you from there. So that's what she says to him. Then Rebecca does something really interesting. It says, she says to Isaac, I'm disgusted with my life because of the Hittite women. If Jacob marries a Hittite woman like these from among the native women, what good will life be to me? So Isaac sends for Jacob and blessed him. He instructed him, saying, you shall not take a wife from among the Canaanite women. Go to Padan Aram, go to your mother's father and take a wife from there. May El Shaddai bless you and make you fertile and numerous, that you shall become an assembly people. May he grant you blessing. And then it says, then Isaac sent Jacob off, and he went to Padan Aram. So that's when he does it. What the rabbis just said is there's 14 years that elapses between those two things. Now it seems strange because back in verse 45 it says, let him forget what he's done to you, then I will fetch you from there. Let me not lose both of you in one day. So you think the assumption of this is when she says, let me not lose both of you in one day, that she's talking about Jacob and Esau, that my son Esau will never talk to me again. And if he kills you, then you both die. So that's why we have this interesting midrash that the time elapses. But you still have to deal with what the Torah says. By the way, you can also see how Rebecca manipulates the situation, says that he's only going there to save his life, but of course what he's also going to do is get married there. Let's continue on. So 14 years.
Where are we?
When
14
Esau-
years on account of his brother Esau. And he continued there to learn the ways of the Lord and his commandments. When Esau saw that Jacob had fled and escaped from him, and Jacob had cunningly obtained the blessing, then Esau grieved exceedingly, and he was also vexed at his father and mother. He also rose up and took his wife, and went away from his father and mother to the land of Seir. There he married his second wife, Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and he called her name Adah, saying that the blessing had in that time passed from him. After dwelling in Seir for 6 months, Esau returned to the land of Canaan and placed his 2 wives in his father's house in Hebron. And the wives of Esau vexed and provoked Isaac and Rebekah with their works, for they walked not in the ways of the Lord, but served their fathers' gods of wood and stone, as their fathers had taught them, and they were more wicked than their fathers. They sacrificed and burnt incense to the Baalim, and Isaac and Rebekah became weary of them. And at the end of 14 years of Jacob's residing in the house of Eber, Jacob desired to see his father and his mother, and he returned home. Esau had forgotten in those days what Jacob had done to him, in having taken the blessings from him. But when Esau saw Jacob returning to his parents, he remembered what Jacob had done to him, and he was greatly incensed against him, and he sought to slay him.
So here's a weird thing. So the rabbis say that all this time passes, and that indeed that before he ever goes up to Aram, to Syria, he goes and lives in the land of Israel for 14 years. The problem is, and again, he's successful in making his brother forget, but as soon as his brother sees him, then he remembers again. So it doesn't work. The issue, of course, is that Isaac is alive. Rebecca is alive. Esau is now married to 2 women who are not Israelite, who are giving him problems. The Midrash just did something really interesting, which it rectified a problem in the text. There is a line in chapter 36, and since we have it up, let's just look real quickly. If we look at chapter 36 of Genesis, it says that Esau took wives from the Canaanite women, Adah, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and Oholibamah, the daughter of Anah, daughter of Zivon the Hivite, and also Basemath, the daughter of Ishmael, the sister of Nabaot. And we're going to get to that. By the way, Adah is the one who bears to Esau Eliphaz, the father of Amalek. But here's the weird thing. In chapter 36, it says her name is Adah. That's not the name that she has earlier on. So there's a problem in that there's two different names used for the woman. So the Midrash here basically says she's called by a different name. So it says right here, Esau was 40 years old. He took the wife of to wife Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. So there's a problem in that there's two different wives that are mentioned here as one of the two wives that he took that were Hittite or Hivite, non-Israelite, Canaanite. We are going to read about him marrying a daughter of Ishmael, which is really important in the Midrash. But you see, the Midrash just also had to explain why we have two versions of the same woman's name, and they're basically telling us that that's because Adah was her nickname. Her name is Adah, as a nickname. That wasn't her name; it was a nickname. So Esau wants to kill him again after seeing him, but
Esau would not kill Jacob while his father was yet alive, lest Isaac beget another son. He wanted to be sure of being the only heir. However, his hatred against Jacob was so great that he determined to hasten the death of his father and then dispatch Jacob. Such murderous plans Esau cherished in his heart, though he denied that he was harboring them. But God spoke, "Probably you know not that I examine the hearts of men, for I am the Lord that searches the heart." And not God alone knew the secret desires of Esau. Rebekah, like all the mothers, was a prophetess, and she delayed not to warn Jacob of the danger that hung over him. "Your brother," she said to him, "is as sure of accomplishing his wicked purpose as though you were dead. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice and arise. Flee to Laban, my brother, to Haran, and tarry with him for 7 years, until your brother's fury turns away." In the goodness of her heart, Rebekah could not but believe that the anger of Esau was only a fleeting passion and would disappear in the course of time. But she was mistaken. His hate persisted until the end of his life.
Yep. So again, what seems to be happening here is they're going out of their way to basically say that he's going up there because he's getting away from his brother. The emphasis is not so much on the marriage yet, though Rebecca has introduced this. I want to tell you, you just read it, and Rosemary, I want to point out, Rebecca, like all the mothers, was a prophetess. It means Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah were all prophets. They were all people who had the gift of prophecy.
But Mark, don't Esau and Jacob fall on each other's necks later on and they get along nicely, or at least reasonably well?
Falling on the neck, according to the Midrash, is not a pleasant falling on the neck. Ronnie, right? Ronnie wants to add to that right now. Ronnie?
Write this in your calendar. I have nothing to say.
No! Ronnie, what happens when Esau falls on Jacob's neck?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of stories. I mean, they cry on each other's necks, right?
No, I thought you were going to give me the famous Midrash that he fell on his neck to bite him and kill him.
I didn't remember that.
Oh yeah. So the rabbis point out that that's strange language that he fell on his neck. It doesn't usually, when you kiss somebody, you don't kiss them on the neck. I mean, you could, but usually kiss them on the cheek, kiss them, you could even kiss somebody on the lips.
Get a room.
Kiss them on the face. Kissing on the neck isn't where you normally go for the kiss. If you're biting someone's jugular vein, on the other hand, you can go for the neck. So they like to tell us that until that very moment, we're not really clear what's going to happen. So yeah, no, they use that in particular to say that he doesn't ever give up. And
Doesn't the Torah itself say that they do? Or am I interpreting?
Because even after they revisit you, when they come back together, they don't hang out together. They go in their different directions, which is part of, kind of part of the reality, which is you might not want to go to war with a person anymore, but it doesn't mean necessarily you want to share Passover Seder with them. I don't know, but it does happen that families figure out how to stop fighting, but they don't ever repair the breach. But I wanted to get to this. I don't know who made this comment, but somebody made this comment. It says the owner. So this is somebody's computer is the owner. Could Isaac have been in fear of Esau attacking him? Who said that? Somebody chatted that out. Anybody? Somebody was prescient. They
The owner is Marina, isn't it?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Go down to the pictures.
I'm not sure. I can't see. Oh, I can actually, but it's so small. I'm doing too much on this screen. So this screen is. So anyways, yes, whoever made that point, it is 100%.
She says it.
And we will get to that in the next week. We're going to wrap up here because if we go any further, we're going to get.
I just found the unmute button. Yes, it was me.
Yes. So thank you, Marina, because you did point out something that the Midrash is very conscious of, which is that there seems to be this fear that this lurk in the background, this possibility that Isaac is doomed. I mean, Isaac's going to be killed. Here he was on his deathbed 60 years early, and the rabbis want to give us the understanding that his deathbed could be it could be a death that was not natural. Let's put it that way. An unnatural ending to his life because, Esau is not above that. Maybe. And again, it's close. He really is. He really does not really know what else to do other than who's he going to kill if he can't kill his brother. He doesn't want to. The Midrash told us a really interesting thing was he didn't want to kill Jacob while Isaac was still alive, not because he didn't want to cause Isaac grief. It's the most obvious answer. Isaac is 127 at this point, or 123. No, the rabbis point out that it's because Isaac could have had another kid. So if he's going to kill his brother, then there's another brother that can come along and inherit everything anyways. When did that happen? The first brothers, Cain and Abel.
Unmuted.
Everybody forgets that after Cain kills Abel, there's another brother, Seth. And Seth inherits everything because that's the brother that survived and that didn't get driven out and doesn't get punished. It's Seth. So interestingly enough, the Midrash reminds us of that other biblical story. And what is it? Yep, there could still be another brother as long as Isaac is still alive. So once Isaac's gone, there's no more challenges to his inheritance, then he can kill him, but not until then. That is where we're going to leave off.
Hey, Mark, can I just say something before we sign out?
Please.
I just want to thank everybody who participated in my birthday. We made almost $1,800 donated to the synagogue. And I want to encourage anybody, because we are home, we're not spending a lot of money right now, to continue to make these donations in lieu of our time together, because I am just so humbled that this went so well. I want to especially wish Reverend Lynn a happy Easter. It's always such a blessing to have you join us, and to everybody else who's a part of this right now. And I know that Rabbi will probably agree with this. We have attention deficit worse than most people do, and keeping our energy focused right now and doing the things that we're doing and walking and trying to give back is probably the most important thing that we can do right now. So I just am humbled, and I love everybody. I miss everybody. I look so forward to celebration, and everybody just have a wonderful holiday. Keep giving. Keep
I
giving.
love Mark, but I miss our side conversations too.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And then going to lunch.
Yeah.
Yes. We definitely miss.
We have to
definitely
over chat. That's all. Text.
And also, I believe that Edith is online with us as well. And I want to wish Edith special wellness because she went through such a surgery that I'm glad to hear that she's up and running again.
Happy Pesach. Thank you, Mark.
Is Edith still there? Yeah, thank you. And thank you, everybody. Please have a great Pesach. Let us know if you need anything during the holiday. Again,
I heard a
we want to wish
really
everyone a
bad Passover.
weekend.
Thanks,
Easter.
Mark.
Have a
Thanks, everybody.
Zis and Pesach, everybody. Please.
Listen.
Nice.
Zis
Well,
Thanks,
bad.
Mark. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everybody. Have a pleasant Passover, and we'll get over this real soon.
When geez, I can't even think. It's what happens when you just self-isolate like this. When Elijah comes for Passover, remember to stay 6 feet away.
Elijah.
That's it. Thank you. And I think I don't know what my name is. It says it's Marilyn. Whatever.
Yes.
God bless everybody. Bye-bye.
There's somebody says something funny on the JLTV thing. So you'll see it. But one of the celebrities or actresses that says, since nobody else was at my Seder, I guess Elijah can sit anywhere. So that was a good one.
I like it. But you can't leave your door open.
That's true. Elijah doesn't need it though, really.
Okay.
Reverend Lynn, wait a second before we all
Yes.
jump off. Reverend Lynn, we need to tell you, and all the people who are there too, the real story of why we opened the door for Elijah, folks, is what?
I know, the blood libel.
For the
Yes.
nation,
Blood libel.
we're not
Yes, you know it.
drinking
It's not for Elijah. It's not for God. God doesn't need us to open our doors. But
Really.
our
It's those damn pagans.
our neighbors were not too sure where our matzah came from. This year, our matzah,
Exactly. The brown bones of little Christian children.
that's right. It is
Tasty.
not in my matzah. And then again, I don't like matzah, so that's why.
I do, but it needs a lot of butter.
Peanut butter.
And a little salt.
We are going
How
to.
you eat peanut butter on matzah? Doesn't it just go
That'd
weird?
be good too.
By the way,
Please
remember
sit
we do have Friday night services this Friday night, and we will have class next Tuesday. We do not have class Wednesday night, the Torah study class, because we have Seder. But
Yeah.
Following Tuesday and Wednesday, we do have classes, and in the meantime, we'll keep our Friday night service going. So everybody, stay healthy, stay safe. Let's
Thanks.
keep everybody safe and well. Take care, everybody.
Miss you all. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, Rabbi Mark.
Bye, everybody.
All right.
Have a
bye-bye.
good week, everybody.
I don't know how to
Thank
do
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.